Okay, this video is about the Mendota Railroad Museum and how far we've come. We've come from a very depressed and forsaken area where there used to be a lot of history, and the depot was itself about ready to be torn down in this time of the early 90s. The BN was still using the motor wheel branch, the old IC. The IC was gone, remnants of it before they built all the warehouses and everything. You could still see it. The depot was getting pretty dilapidated, and I would take pictures of it when I came back. I was living in Las Vegas at the time, but when I made my annual trek back here, I would take whatever pictures I could. I never thought that the museum would happen, really. I did mention it to a friend that, there needs to be a railroad museum because there's so much history. The era of the old passenger house was in this very important area where our depot is. The passenger house was in the area of the steam engine where it's located now. And this was the first era of Mendota, and very few people really focus on this. I mean, this was the beginning. This was the Abe Lincoln time. This was Timothy B. Blackstone time. The railroad park was along Main Street. The old IC freight house still exists, and there you've seen it on the right. But there was a second time, a second era after all those buildings had burned down in that area, the passenger house, and then they built a big grand Union Depot north of the old passenger house. So all these grounds in the foreground were abandoned. As you can see, just to the left of the IC freight house, that whole area had buildings, and the passenger house was in the vicinity of the REA building, which you see on the left middle of the screen. So there's a lot of history, and this image that I made, this colored pencil drawing, shows that there was all these buildings in that area, and at the far left is the old passenger house, then the railroad park all along Main Street there. This was the beginning. This is what Mendota basically flourished into the 1870s, a very important time that history is going to be lost if we don't preserve it. So I'm just trying to say we've come a long way. This area, this ground, if this ground could talk, it'd have a lot of stories to tell. And the museum has come so far that we have rebuilt a whole 3-block area. I remember coming back and just taking pictures of the old depot. This one's a picture by Henry Oxtetter here. And this is also a Henry Oxtetter picture. Shows the REA, Railway Express Agency, on the right. Early Amtrak, in the 1980s though. And once again, I want to say that this picture here is from where we came from, Take a look at that again. Very important that we know where we've come from. This is the second era, the Union Depot era, from 1885 to 1942. But anyway, the breaking of the Prairie Museum flourished into this. So that was another whole block area all the way up to the church, and then south where the REA building the original REA building was. So we've excavated, we've dug, and we've found old artifacts, old burnt brick from the old passenger house, and burnt wood. Here we have the gate tower, the North Gate Tower, under construction. These pictures are in no really particular order, but there's just so much history here. Here we have the unveiling of our memorial. Here Horace Hume and Judy Reed are looking at the layout. On that day of the grand opening, in 1997, we had these people involved on the stage. And this was the ceremony that day in August of 1997. Bill Greenwood handing Alan Russell a plaque. There's Bill Greenwood, Harry Schaller down below, sitting at the right. Harry Schaller, very enthusiastic man. Really, Harry Schaller and Inger, his wife, at a Railroad Crossing Day event. Bill Slusher, responsible for me really getting involved. He told me about the museum. And here we have Lee Stocking, who has done so much for the Railroad Museum. And this picture here, it was taken out at Harry Schaller's, has our beginning volunteers. So there's a lot of people in there that have helped get this whole thing off the ground. Took a lot of construction to get where we're at. Harry Schaller's truck in the distance, so Harry was around. Our depot waiting room was under construction. And at this time, a little before, I was building the layout in Las Vegas, Nevada. So here I am out in Las Vegas. This is part of the layout. Eventually, I was going to assemble it all and get it back here in May of 1997. And I arrive, and this is the room of the HO model layout, you know. I mean, so we had to work fast once that room was prepared. There's Alan Russell and John Pearson. Slowly but surely, it came together. Leo Mulak had helped me cut all the woodwork down below to support. So these were some of the model buildings that I built out in Las Vegas. And then when I brought it here and set it up, this was one of the trains. Once again, we have all the people on the platform there, and Horace Hume, who we couldn't have done this museum, the museums, without him. Here we have Matt Holzner in the middle and me at the left, and Matt's friend at the right. Matt at the controls on that day of the grand opening. Alan Russell, who has been extremely important and the museum through the years. Pat Reed, Judy Reed on a Railroad Crossing Day. Judy Reed helped so much. And Bill Phelan, I believe. And then there's Mayor Steve Bound, I believe. Alice Seaman. That's me, Ray Tutaj Jr., giving a little speech on the history. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the Amtrak president at the time. Here's some random pictures that Leo Mulak took and just kind of printed off of his home printer, and he gave them to me. But that's what was going on that opening day. There's Leo and Norma on the bottom right, and Steve Bill Slusher bottom left, Bill Greenwood upper right, Horace Hume, and the famous artist August Holland. August Holland at the left, very superb artist, has many of his paintings at the library. I got a shot with Horace Hume here, so that was great. Harry and Inger, so instrumental, loved their enthusiasm. Bill Greenwood couldn't do it, couldn't have done all this without him either. And there's Bill Greenwood at the right with Horace Hume and Willie Heinzinger at the left. And I was the first depot master in 1997, took care of the depot. My dad followed me after that for till 2010, and then Ed Bach took over, and there he is with Bill Greenwood. And then now Len Schwenlein has charge of the depot. But anyway, before we got our steam engine, I mean, there was a lot of work that had to have been done. And here we are trying to lay rail. And I think we basically gave up and let some professionals do it in the end. But here are attempts by several people. Alan Russell, Steve Shutt, Pat Reed. Alan Russell and Pat Reed there. Bill Slusher. And here the track is getting ready for the caboose that was supposed to come in from Ottawa. Rainy day. This was in November. I believe so. Here's Steve Shutt while we were looking at the track there. Here's the caboose in Ottawa being lifted onto a truck. Here it is being lifted off the truck in Mendota and was about to be put on the tracks. So that was the first thing really to arrive. The caboose siding was pretty dilapidated. So there it sat for a while until we got the steam engine here. Steam engine sitting in Ottawa there in the fence. So they had to build panel track that went all the way from where it was sitting. There's Leo Mulak oiling the moving parts. Steve Shutt at the left, and I'm not sure of the guy at the right, but he was in charge of getting the thing moved. And Halters, God bless them. I mean, them guys worked so hard to get that panel track laid all the way. There's Ed Thornton on the left who kind of opposed the move. But here we go, the final joining of the track, of the panel track to the yard track, and the IC track bent over to, curve onto our museum track. Here it is in transition. Along the way, we stopped at a restaurant, and there's the crew. Pat Reed in the background, Steve Shutt right, me, Harry Schaller, and the railroad crew. I can't remember their names. Anyway, we're stopped on the main line here, checking everything, make sure everything's working. Passing a BN train. Coming around the corner at the Mendota station, greeted by a big group of people on the platform. As they pull the train around and get it onto the new track, they push it back and an Amtrak train happens to be going by. But this was the big joining, and there it was. Minus the fence, which had to be built. And Neil Drummer would take care of the headlights and keeping the 4978 lit up. He usually was the one at the Sweet Corn Festival with the steam engine heating up all the water for the corn. Anyway, there the engine sat through the winter with no fence, and finally a fence was built around, and we had to put ballast on the track, and that was no fun. It was just piled up there and basically shoveled onto the track. Here Halters is putting in another track for us, so they had to put in a switch. All kinds of things have been done. I'm just trying to tell everybody that, hey, there's a lot of work that had to be done. Willie Heinzinger, Steve Carlson at the far left, and Alan Russell pounding in one of the bars, and they've ran into many obstacles there. Old stones. Jack Priller is the middle guy there. Jack Priller. Steve Carlson at far right. Alan Russell looking into the hole there, and Bill Hine in the foreground. Alan Russell at left. Passing train going by. The work that had to be done was immense to put in these posts. I mean, there were so many posts, and they all had to be hand dug. I don't know how Alan Russell managed to do all that. That's just crazy. And the platform wasn't even in yet, and when they were digging the platform lights, it was quite a task, digging the trench for that. But I did find an old brick from the old passenger house in that trench where they were putting in the lamppost lights. Here we are, one by one, putting the fence together. And then all the brick had to be laid. Don Reese is in there. There's so many people involved. Here I am climbing to the top to light the semaphore, and we had it lit for a while, but the railroad kind of frowned on it. There's a view from the top there that I took. You can see the old right-of-way of the Illinois Central, and Lee Stocking was really responsible for greening this whole area up with sod, and here we are working on the gate towers. A lot of people involved in that. Thanks to Lee Stocking, he raised the funds for that from both lumber companies in town. It's a lot of pictures. Bill Widmer at far left, and Don Reese in the middle, Alan Russell at the right. We have Hank Nashhold right there, Lee Stocking, Bill Widmer, Don Reese, Alan Russell, all working really hard to put this gate tower together. Lee Stocking and Bill Widmer, Bill Hine, I think the gate towers are really a great addition to the property. So much work had to been done to get these up, and they need to be well preserved. They need to be painted. The legs need to be painted every couple, 2-3 years, I would think. There's Don Reese at far left, Pat Reed looking up. And then we had another gate tower built on the north end. And there's Bill Widmer measuring the windows. Pat Reed and Bill Widmer checking out the plans. Alan Russell pounding in some nails, shingles. An unveiling of the memorial, the marker, historical marker, and Bill Slusher proudly stands next to it. They had to reside the caboose. Harry Schell at far right, and here we have the combine car when it arrived, basically. There's my truck parked in front of the combine car. It was quite a rust bucket, but slowly but surely, with the hard work of Alan Russell and Bill Widmer and Henry Oxtetter, Don Reese, John Pearson, Howard Nielsen. You'll see Howard Nielsen welding in here somewhere. There's Henry Oxtetter and Alan Russell. And there's the inside of our combine car. Yep. And then there's Bill Widmer and making great progress with Don Reese there. There's Don Reese standing up. He was our telegraph guy. And that's what it kind of looks like today. It's very nice and beautiful. Leo Mulak painted the car. Leo Mulak did a lot for the museums. Henry Nashhold down below. Alan Russell and Leo Mulak painting away. Leo Mulak doesn't mess around. He goes for it. And there's Leo threatening to spray paint me. When I was a kid, Leo Mulak took our grade school pictures. So, I mean, who would have ever thought I'd be working with them all these years later? But they did get it painted, and it looked really great. And there's Norma Mulak and Leo. Norma at her house. They invited me over several times to eat. And Marilee Holzner. There's Don Reese. Yeah. During a railroad crossing day. Jim Carroll, who really took the layout under his wings when I was gone away. Leo Mulak showing off some of his collectibles. Here they were replacing the driveway when it was really bad, and Ed Bach was helping out tremendously in so many projects. Now the dining car, the cafe lounge car at the far left there, in Lyman, Colorado. I've seen this in 1994. So I was passing through Lyman, Colorado, and little did I know that all those years later it would be arriving at our museum. Go figure. Yeah. It came as a blue car from a tourist line out in Lyman, Colorado. And they backed it onto the track, connected it up to our Milwaukee Combine car, which was under the process of being painted. And there it was. And this is later. This is now updated with the new mural. And then it was repainted a couple times. So in 2025, it was repainted again by an outstanding crew. We're doing synchronized taping here. And when it was done, it was just gorgeous. I invite everybody to come to see it. And the mural I painted, took me 3 months to paint that desert mural, but really it's based off of an old postcard from the Rock Island and old pictures, as you see here. They used to have these kinds of murals. Anyway, here's our IC car when it arrived from Paxton, thanks to the efforts of Brian Walters. And here's Mike Cervani scraping the side of the car, but eventually they got it all painted, and it looked really sharp. And today our 4978 sits on our grounds looking really great. And north of the depot, it's looking good. The gate tower was repainted. We got new legs for this gate tower recently, so we've got to paint those. And Alan Russell and Jim Mateus, I think, and Ed Bach on top there. I was handing up nails. Anyway, it's our grounds today. We've got telegraph poles put up and markers dug and put into the ground, and we've come such a long way. So it's taken a lot of volunteers, a lot of work, and this has to be carried on by a future generation of younger people to keep this going, to keep the history alive. We have a webcam, rail cam by Steel Highways that had needed a trench. And in that trench we found all kinds of stone and brick from the old buildings. We had Sanborn maps to know exactly where everything was at. And so we knew where the old telegraph office was and the passenger house. And we also discovered Abe Lincoln was here and slept in the passenger house way back in 1858. Here we have Tanner Dominy looking into the ground 3 feet deep for old remnants. We found a lot of brick. Brick was usually at the 2 foot, 2.5, 3 foot layer. We found old burnt pieces of wood from the old passenger house. And here we have our displays of switch stands and all kinds of stuff. Markers, milepost markers. A new pedestrian crossing that I put together with some help. And we found some old telegraph poles that the city helped us get out of the ground south of town here, about 1.5 miles. They were kind enough to bring them over and put them on the grounds, and thanks to Kenny Otterball, we eventually got them in the ground. There's Kenny there at right with Brian Walters at the left. It was quite tricky putting them in, but they did such a fantastic job. And we were happy to have the old Illinois Central telegraph poles, authentic ones, from Mendota put in. Here Brian Walters is putting the insulators on. I had prepared all the cross arms with the help of Trenton and Tanner Dominy. Here Brian Walters is inside the Cafe Lounge car. Here he found an old memorial stone from the IC that they issued in 1951, celebrating the 100 years, 1851 and 1951. So they brought it up from south and brought it here, and now we have one. Mendota used to have one, and now we have another one, and this is a great addition to our Illinois Central history. And our caboose, Bob Wamhoff, repainted the potbelly stove. And here we have Barb Wyman, and names are evading me, but Alex Resvan at far right with Brian and Barb. And here's our back room of our new 909 building, and upstairs our 909 building, which is downtown. Here we have Brian and Mike Cervani during railroad crossing days. Here are some pictures of Amtrak that I like to take anytime there's something special coming through. Amtrak does serve Mendota. 6 trains a day stop here. Southwest Chief Illinois Zephyr Carl Sandberg. And I think this is one of the greater paint schemes right here, the Operation Lifesaver. And then there's the Pepsi can paint scheme. Inside our depot. And we've come a long way. Here's the layout I built way back in 94 to 97. And with the great additions by Dave Beck. And here we have the telegraph office. The Bill Greenwood room has a lot of artifacts and railroad stuff. And the back room, we've got tons of stuff. There's the Dave Beck display. You'll never find a better CB&Q locomotive display in the world, probably. And so it's great. There's Trenton and Tanner Dominy, great volunteers, lots of enthusiasm. Janice Shirey, lots of enthusiasm to keep things going. Mike Gleason at an older railroad crossing days in the early days. Willie Heinzinger, who donated the flagpole there by the combine car. Then we have volunteers, Karen Bach, and Alan Russell's wife, and Bill Hine on the old Gandy Dancer. the speeder car, motor car. This is at a recent Railroad Crossing Day event, so thanks to Trenton Dominy, he took these pictures. There's Mike Cervini on the speaker, and Ed Brown at the Operation Lifesaver booth, and I was playing in the railroad car here, in the Illinois Central Railroad car, where I also played for the farmers market on occasion. But on the Railroad Crossing Day, I displayed all of my art, well, some of it, railroad related, inside the car, and I unveiled this pencil drawing on that day. I forgot what day in June it was of 2025, and here we have the professor and authority of the 4978, Leo McCauley. And there's a Gandy Dancer ride with a bunch of friends, and here is Ed Bach and our volunteer Jeff. Sorry, I could not remember. Illinois Central passing through. And 4978 during sweet corn days, there was enough lighting that up, and a rare shot of a BN engine while the switch was still into the main, sitting there for a Railroad Crossing Day event. That was really cool. Anyway, I just thank you for watching. I felt it was important to show you how far we have come, and we need to keep going, and we need to just remain steadfast in carrying on the history of Mendota. And I appreciate you watching and hope you enjoyed some of these pictures.